Hi, I'm Phil Constantine. On this Travels with Phil, we're going to Colonial Jamestown, Virginia. This is the first English settlement, first permanent English settlement in the Americas. This is a overhead shot from the International Space Station. You can see it's on a little bit of an isthmus out here along the James River, which they named after King James, who was one of the sort of sponsors of this particular expedition. 3 ships came out here, and they have a lot of ships in the water. That's one of the ferries getting across the many estuaries out here. And it's actually on a peninsula. It's an island, but it's actually a peninsula. And let's go over to the site of the original Jamestown. Now, there's a lot to see out here. And the original place was established in May of 1607, and there were 105 settlers and 39 crewmen that initially showed up here at this particular scene. And it wasn't very successful in the very beginning. Let's go to a video I shot.
Travels with Phil continues from Jamestown, the original English colony. That's a statue to Captain John Smith. And contrary to popular belief, he did not marry Pocahontas. She married another man. Whether or not she saved his life is a different story, but this is the scene of the fort and part of the original village. This is James Fort. You can see some of the graveyards over there to your left, the bay out there to your further left. This is a model scale replica of what was going on. This is part of a cellar and a kitchen over here that they're doing archaeological excavations at. They do quite a bit of archaeology here. In fact, it's sort of cooperated by the National Park Service and by a private organization that's doing the archaeology. In fact, when you come in, part of your fee goes to pay that company. When I got in, normally I get in free because of my senior pass. I think I had to pay $4 or $5, of which that part goes to the private organization that's out here doing all the archaeology. You can see all kinds of stuff here. The square tower here in front of you is it's allegedly part left. Don't know if that's a reconstruction or not, but the part behind it, the rest of that building over there is reconstruction. Those are the barracks. Here we had part of the church and the burial sites as well. It's actually a very lovely setting. Those are the palisades, the fence out there, that's a recreation. And so, like I said, the church is a recreation too. But this is Jamestown, the first English colony in North America.
And between 1609 and 1610, about 80% of the settlers died. They didn't do a lot of crops, unfortunately. A lot of the folks who came out were upper-class folks who weren't used to actually working. And so things didn't work very well. And between 1608 and 1624, there were 6,000 people here. 2,600 of them died. Now, actually, a small world story. I saw a PBS story about the bones that were found here at Jamestown the day before I was here actually at Jamestown, and that didn't normally happen. I didn't see a lot of broadcast TV, so a little bit of a small world story. But these are some of the folks who were buried out there. It was capital of Virginia between 1616 and 1699. And they were located right in the middle of the Powhatan Confederacy. There was about 14,000 of the Indians in the area, and initially they were all very helpful. And the relationships sort of soured. A lot of the folks who were coming here were looking for gold. I don't know if they were expecting to just find it on the ground, but that's what their plan was, to come over here, get rich, and then go back to England and buy bigger mansions than the ones they already have. It took them a while before they actually got craftsmen to show up. And so there's all kinds of stuff you can see here, including a worm or two. This is an old horse trough and a drinking fountain from 1907, as it were. But lots and lots of old stuff. This is part of the fort. It was called Fort James, and that's the first thing they established when they were here. And you should watch some of the old movies about this place, some of the documentaries, and it'll give you a lot of the details. There was a lot of deprivations here. It wasn't very well run, or there wasn't good feelings. There was even a Spanish spy here, allegedly. A guy was executed in 1609, a guy by the name of George Kendall, for being a spy for the Spanish, who were also doing colonizing here in the Americas, as it were. Let's go outside and show you another video I took.
Irene Bedard, this is for you. Jamestown, and their plaque and statue of Pocahontas here at Jamestown. just for you, Irene.
Irene did the voice for Pocahontas in the Disney movie. I met her once, and a very nice lady. All right, some of the statuary for Captain John Smith. No, he didn't marry Pocahontas. She might have interceded perhaps in some sort of ceremony, or the story about him dying. Lots of recreators out here, people that are dressed up in the old colonial stuff, and they tell all kinds of stories. Lots and lots of museums and displays. This is over at the Jamestown Visitor Center. And this is what you first see when you come in. They do have several maps out there. It's really good for showing what's going on. They have lots of some of the old pottery and items that they found from the initial settlers, from later settlers, because, again, this was ongoing for quite some time out there. And like I say, it was the capital of the colony of Virginia from 1616 to 1690. The first African slaves that came in at one point around 1619, and they were there to do tobacco. And tobacco became a big crop here. John Rolfe, who is the guy that actually did marry Pocahontas, he managed to find seeds somewhere. They were smuggled in, and they started growing tobacco here. And that's where the slaves eventually became part of the colony area out here. And tobacco obviously has been a big crop in Virginia, North Carolina, this part of the eastern seaboard for a long time. This is an original book that was found at the scene. Some more of the pottery, just lots and lots and lots of stuff. This is a breastplate for one of the soldiers there in one of the original colonies. You can see it's looking the worse for wear. It's been over 400 years now since Jamestown was first established. They abandoned it for like a year, and then they came back. It was burned down a couple of times during various periods like the Civil War and some other spots. Lots of trees out there, though, now. I can imagine get a bit humid during the summer months. Over to the Jamestown Monument. This was for the third centennial, their 300-year celebration. Impressive monument if you like obelisks, and some nice carvings and designs in this particular spot out here. As you walk through the grounds, it's very obvious as you go through out there. And as we move around, we're now going to go over and see one of the other museums that's out there. And I'll let you pronounce that on your own. My skills of pronouncing, see, can't even say that right, are not too good, so I'll let you figure that one out for yourself. There is lots of really nice scenery out here at Jamestown. It's a very pretty setting. May not have been so good to start a colony because they weren't really prepared for growing stuff, but even the Indians didn't settle here too much because they didn't think the ground was the best for growing stuff. They had different locations out there. But this is the operation that's set up by the private company that also works with the National Park Service. And they're looking at some of the foundations for some of the original dwelling spots out here. They did bring industry over. They brought some Germans over who were doing glass work as a part of the original colony. They eventually left, joined the Indians, and may have even joined the Spanish later. But there was a lot. They were trying to do glass and other things that were going to be exported and help support them, and then they could trade with the Indians. But then when the relationships with the Powhatans got bad, there was nobody to trade with.
Travels with Phil continues in Jamestown, the Archaeology Museum. Interesting sign here, legacy. It says the Commonwealth of Virginia recognizes 11 Indian tribes. 8 are descendant communities of the Powhatan, and 2, the Pamunkey and Mattapony, have occupied the reservation since the mid-17th century. These Powhatan descendants and those who came after them are working to understand a shared past when our nations collide. But I like this part right here. They are still here.
And there actually are 2 reservations not that far away. They don't look like much as far as any kind of museums or things like that. It's just basically where people are living, and it blends in the surrounding territory. So if you didn't know they were there, you probably wouldn't think anything special about it. So again, pipes, old pottery, stuff from original colonies or within the first 10, 15 years or so out there. So lots and lots and lots of things that you can look at here. Ceramics, etc., locks. These are locks to keep things locked up. There was actually hints of cannibalism here during what they called the starving years, particularly 1609 through 1610, between the lack of a drought and the problems that they had with the Indians by then. They didn't have a lot of crops coming in, and again, this wasn't the best place to grow stuff. Now, they did get some successful crops later, but combine a drought with problems with your neighbors, and it's going to make living very, very difficult. And eventually, when John Smith took over operating the colony, he basically told the upper-class folks who weren't used to working, he said, "You don't work, you don't eat." And that caused some bitterness and some resentment, but it's a realistic approach, especially when it's hard to grow stuff. Now, not too far away on the peninsula, the opposite end, is the Black Point. And this is, again, I said, I like this. It's a very pretty, nice, scenic area if you like trees and you like water and you like rivers and estuaries and basins and things like that. You can see a lot of the other stuff out here. Very nice drive through here just to see the nice wooded area. And there's a nice hike out to Black Point. And I tell you what, show you a little bit of a video here, and I'll try not to comment too much so you can just appreciate the scenic beauty.
Charles Whitfield continues at Black Point, Jamestown Settlement, Virginia. Just listen.
So see, if this had been good crop growing and they had knowledge about how to grow crops, this might have been a much more prosperous area. It's a very nice looking access to fish, etc. out there. But they weren't really quite prepared for a realistic colony. They were mainly looking for gold, unfortunately, and weren't really up for it. So again, you can see some of the beautiful territory out here. If you'd like to know about the early colonies in the United States, it's a good place to visit. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up by clicking on the button below. You're welcome to leave comments below as long as the language is family friendly. And finally, if you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the button over on the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you again for watching.